Welcome to Surrogacy Talk with me, your fabulous host and family building expert, Frank Golden. I'll be talking about surrogacy, IVF, and making babies. Hello, everyone. For this segment, of course, we have the, as always, fabulous Erica Daybook in the studio. And we actually have a very special guest with us today. We have Dr. Angie Beltsos, the CEO and Medical Director of Vios Fertility Institute. Hello, Angie.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We are so excited to finally have you here in our studio. So first and foremost, just kind of explain to our listeners what you are, what your profession is, and a little bit about you, your background.
Well, first off, we're in this fabulous space at Golden Gossip. I'm so proud of what you're building, Frank. It's amazing.
Thank you.
I am a reproductive endocrinologist here in Chicago. I have been in practice for quite some time. I would say, oh my goodness, hate to admit it, but around 20 years. And we have built recently a new fertility clinic called Vios Fertility Institute, and we have a practice here in Chicago with some amazing physicians that have joined us, and we also have Vios St. Louis and Vios Milwaukee.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you.
That is amazing.
Very exciting.
So let's just kind of dive in here. What is the day-to-day of a reproductive endocrinologist?
Well, that is an excellent question. What do we do all day?
I guess the abbreviated version, because
Yeah.
you could probably go into it for like hours, I'm sure.
Right?
And the general would be make life.
Right.
Somewhere in between that.
Yeah, we make babies. And, you know, day to day for us is beginning typically with understanding someone's fertility. In the morning, we do a lot of simple blood tests and ultrasounds to either begin the testing process and or follow patients through treatment. And as their eggs are developing, if they're doing insemination processes, well, when the eggs are ready, we give them a little trigger shot, and we may be doing inseminations in the morning and or afternoon. If couples or patients are moving on to IVF, then it may involve, for us, our day job is retrieving some of those eggs, mixing them carefully with sperm to create baby embryos, and then those little embryos will grow in the dish, and once they're ready, transferring them into the uterus.
Wow, fascinating.
So then you actually take the sperm and egg and create the embryo.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Isn't that crazy?
That's so cool.
Literally creating life, right? So talk to us about patients, locating the source of infertility. You talked a little bit about some of the tests. What might those consist of?
When you're evaluating someone's fertility, there are three important ingredients to making a baby, if you will. We need a healthy egg, a strong uterus, and fast-swimming sperm. So the initial testing include those three essential points. To check eggs, we do a simple blood test and ultrasound. Financial reserve is how much money's in the bank, and ovarian reserve are how many eggs are in the bank. So by doing three important tests, FSH, which checks egg quality, estrogen, which will make sure there's good hormone balance, and AMH, which is probably the sexiest of the egg tests, checks how many eggs are left from when a woman was born. So every month, there are about a dozen eggs that sort of bubble to the surface. They're like champagne bubbles. So every egg is protected in its own little, almost like a little water balloon. So they bubble to the surface, and about 12. And your body gets to pick one egg to be the egg of the month. So it'll say, ooh, I like that one. And that one egg will grow. And when it's ready, it popcorns out of the ovary. The rest of the eggs for this month would just get washed away. And next month, another set of eggs come down the pipeline. And so many of the eggs that a woman is born with are never used. They just pretty much just dissolve. And a few lucky eggs, probably around 500 of the millions you were born with, you actually ovulate. So that one's really important. And you do those blood tests along with an ultrasound, and on the ultrasound you can see the little eggs bubbling around in the ovary.
Wow, so it sounds like a serious battery of tests, and then at the end of the day, it gives you a really good idea of the prognosis, right, for that patient.
Yep, and get the pulse of their fertility. And at our clinic at Vios Fertility, we have the Vios Pulse. And so for $99, they can check their eggs, look at the uterus, and along with that, a sperm test to check how many sperm and how fast they swim, along with their shape.
That brings me to an important question. At what age do you feel a woman should really look into doing something like that to really preserve her fertility, right? Or at least find out what her fertility looks like?
Absolutely. Those questions are often not asked, not asked by the OBGYN doctor. They're not asked by the patient. And they're not maybe asked even by partners, where you do want to kind of know where you stand. Do you have a lot of time left as a woman because you are only born with so many eggs, so over time they disappear? And I think being very proactive about that is very relevant. You might be thinking, well, you know what? I'm not going to have kids for a long time from now. It would be important to say, well, let me just see where the eggs are today, how many eggs I have left. Some couples are going to delay having children, and they may be like, well, we're not quite ready. So from the female perspective, knowing your fertility is very important. We take charge of our careers, we take charge of our education, and it's important to take charge of fertility.
Wow. And so would you say like early 30s?
I would say early 30s is an excellent time, even in 20s. And then women who are 40 and are still interested in having a child, it still can span all of the ages. The ideal time to preserve eggs would be early 30s or late 20s.
Great information.
Yeah. Wow.
Wow. I feel like that's something women should learn.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think it would bring people reassurance if they knew that they still had viable eggs in there and they're still fertile, because there's a lot of pressure on women starting at my age.
I get it. You're
This
like
is making me feel good.
You're like, take it easy. But, now is the time. If you've got great eggs, they work the best and thaw the best when they're young and strong. So it is a great time to consider, even though you're like, whoa, wait a minute.
Right.
So that's really fascinating too,
yeah.
because egg freezing is
becoming
more and more popular.
Oh, yeah.
So for all of you out there listening, younger the better, right? Is your word of advice in terms of egg freezing. If you had to pick one or two infertility reasons or causes of infertility, what would you say you see the most in your patients?
Well, there are a couple common ones. In the female side of the equation, it could be that someone's not ovulating. That has become more and more common, where instead of getting a period once a month and ovulating, they skip periods, and that most commonly is due to polycystic ovarian syndrome, or PCOS. Another really common one is tubal factor, where the fallopian tube, when there's one on the right and one on the left, sometimes those can get blocked or scarred, and that can also make it difficult for egg and sperm to meet, because usually they meet in the fallopian tube. And if that tube is blocked, that could interfere. But it takes two to tango, and 40% of the time in couples, it could be male factor as well.
And that brings me to my next question, labeling some of the common misconceptions of infertility. And I think one of those being male factor, right? The female component of the relationship might always assume it's her that is the leading cause of the infertility struggle, but really it's the male factor, if you'd like to speak to that.
Well, it is a very important topic, and I think it does often get brushed aside, and I think it could be done where we do pay a little bit more attention to the sperm. And what could be some of the issues? Well, let's talk about working out. So heat can be have a negative impact on sperm, and so hot tubs, jacuzzis, steam rooms, or if people are really into working out, that extra heat can affect sperm parameters. The environment in which we live is one that could be negative to sperm. So plastics, where, for example, you heat up your spaghetti in the microwave. That has fake estrogens in it, and those are not good for men. They've looked at diapers. They're great, the diapers that are super absorbent, but you're really wrapping this young testes in plastic and keeping it extra warm, and that has been examined. The EPA looks also at the effect of water. There's a lot more estrogen in our water. They've examined fish, and the male fish look more like female fish than they've ever looked before.
Wow.
And so these, I'll call it contaminated waters, genetically modified fruit, all of these products may not be good for sperm production. A woman is born with all her eggs. A man is not born with sperm, and he has to make sperm. It takes about 3 months for the baby sperm to become an adult sperm. And so it is anything that can affect a man physically. He has a fever. He stayed up all night working on a project. He ran the Chicago Marathon. Any of those physical factors can impact sperm production. And they did a really interesting study of fertile men, so guys that have children, and they said every month for 1 year, give a sperm sample. And the numbers were all over the map. There were times where the sperm looked terrible and the shape was off, or it wasn't swimming very well, or the numbers were really fantastic. So this very dynamic number changing, it's a little bit like the stock market bouncing up and down. You'll see a lot of that with sperm testing. So a lot of times if you come and see a doctor for sperm testing, they're going to have you do more than one sample because of that noise. That's very typical for a guy. What about the anti-aging? A lot of couples have gotten remarried, and sometimes you're on baby number 2 with a new partner, and sometimes it's the aging fox. So, the silver fox, as they say. Men who are 50 continue to make great sperm, but the risk of having psychiatric disorders now has been shown to be slightly higher in men over 50. And finally, in anti-aging, I was starting to say, some guys want to take the testosterone. You see them on the billboards, the low T. Testosterone will drop the sperm count dramatically, even to take it to 0. So it's a great contraception, but they think, it's going to help my sperm, so they take it, and that's not a good thing.
Wow. So men out there listening, you are a crucial piece of the puzzle. And so, Dr. Beltsos, couples out there who are attempting to naturally conceive, at what point would you recommend they need a consultation with you if they're trying to conceive on their own and they're just not having any luck?
As far as time goes, I would say if a couple has been trying for 1 year and they're younger, like 36 or younger, then maybe 1 year, and if nothing has happened, to come in. If the time has been 6 months and you're in that late 30s, early 40s, then wait only 6 months to come in. Other things, though, are you may have had some concerns already in your health. Let's say someone had chemotherapy and they were concerned about their sperm or their egg. They might want to come in sooner rather than later, or a ruptured appendix when they were 13. And in that case, it could cause tubal disease. So you're like, you're probably more at risk for some scar tissue. You probably should come in sooner rather than later. And just make sure everything's okay. And if it is, great. And if not, then you're kind of not spending that whole month or that whole year chasing.
Wow. And again, men out there, you need to be a part of the appointment as well.
Yes.
Right? It's very important. Well, great. I just learned so much listening. I'm like, oh my goodness. I thought I had a basic grasp of things, but clearly not. So switching gears here, in terms of surrogacy, what is the role of a reproductive endocrinologist in a surrogacy journey?
Well, surrogacy involves a whole team of people. And as much as each individual element is critical, surrogacy cannot be done, even by definition, without everyone kind of holding hands in this process and helping a couple find their way to baby. So from what I do is sometimes I'm in the beginning of that. I may have a couple who's been attempting pregnancy without success, and they're uterus just doesn't seem to be able to either achieve a pregnancy, so the woman may not ever have a positive pregnancy test, or she may have had a miscarriage and multiple miscarriages or complicated birth. So in those cases, I may be the source of saying, hey, you know what, maybe we should think about surrogacy. Couples may come from agencies like Golden Surrogacy, where they contact you first. They also contact attorneys. So a lot of attorneys may be on front of the conversation, or psychologists. But wherever they start their journey, we begin by helping, number one, check the egg source. So whoever is going to be the person giving the eggs, we want to help navigate the testing, so understanding the ovarian reserve. Could be an egg donor, or it could be the woman herself. Number two, once a surrogate has been identified, we want to make sure she's healthy, and that some of that legwork can be done by her OBGYN, or even the surrogate agencies help look over records and make sure that she's a good candidate. And by law, she must have had a baby. But when I come into the play, I'll make sure her uterus is the right shape. It should be kind of like an upside down triangle. We want to make sure that that uterine lining where the baby embryo will land is fluffy like a nice pillow and sticky like honey, so that rascal will land on there. We do infectious disease screening to make sure the surrogate and the intended parents don't have any conditions that could interfere with and have concern about infection. And we also make sure all the important people are part of this, which includes psychology, legal, the agency, the source of sperm, the source of eggs. So kind of bringing all that together. And then once everybody's ready, we give medicine to make eggs grow, collect the eggs, put the egg and sperm together in the dish, and create the baby embryo. A lot of times that front part is done potentially at a separate time than the implantation phase. So a lot of couples will do sort of the embryo creation part first. Nowadays, pre-implantation genetic screening, which is PGS, is a very common, popular addition to in vitro fertilization. It's not always done, but it allows us to understand the genetic health of an embryo. You say, wow, like how accurate could that be? It's about 90%, 90 to 95% accurate. And it looks for things like Down syndrome, embryos that might miscarry. So you can have some of that information. With genetic health also is the identification of sex. So we do understand whether it's a female embryo or male embryo. And then those embryos are often frozen to keep them safe. And then we find the surrogate.
Wow. That is wonderful. Just listening to you go through that entire process, and you answered a lot of my questions. I was going to ask.
Sorry.
Screening. No, I was going.
Okay.
No, it's great. I was going to ask about the importance of screening for a gestational carrier, and you went through all of it. And so, what is one piece of key advice that you always give couples that come to Vios and they're having the consultation with you, and you have to tell them that or make the recommendation that they should have a gestational carrier? It can't always be an easy thing for, especially the female component, to hear.
Definitely.
Right?
Yeah, it is certainly a very big decision for some situations. And when we look at this process, and as some people may already know, I am the mother of a baby from a surrogate, and so I had 3 children naturally, and then the 4th rascal came with our amazing surrogate. But it is a physical decision in regards to if that uterus could not carry a pregnancy, or physical in the sense there isn't a uterus, for example, same-sex male couples. And then the other side is the emotional element. And for some women, it is a really big deal not to be the one carrying. Some of our conversations work around that it really is a means to an end. So if I could, snap my finger and have that baby in my hands and hand it to her, I don't think she would love it any less.
That's a really great way of looking at it.
Exactly.
You know, if I said, here's this baby and it's your baby and it's just a blink of an eye, as life always is. Right. Time goes through our hands like water. And before you know it, it's October in Chicago, but time goes by quickly. And I think you have to embrace this process. And one of my patients said, you really have to just surrender, and sometimes in life, it's important just to kind of let go a little bit and let the process take care of you too and help you get to really what you want. You don't really want just to have in those emotional pieces to say, oh, well, there's a baby in my womb. You want a baby in your arms. And if we can get you there quickly and safely, and quickly meaning 9 months, I think that is most important to helping a couple find their way through this journey.
That's a beautiful way of saying that.
That's a really great perspective.
Never heard it quite phrased like that.
And that's really why we love Dr. Beltsos, really. So flipping gears here back to your career and your profession, what would you say is one of your most memorable experiences in your career so far?
I'm sure there's a million.
Yeah.
Given what you do.
Yeah, that is true. We have so many humbling moments in life, and a lot of people have cool jobs. To be able to help people have a family, and you take this like seemingly just a piece of dust-sized thing, and you see it under the microscope and place it in someone's uterus, and to see, 9 months later, this baby is a tremendous experience. And some of the fun parts are to hear how they told their spouse, or, how this experience led to their family. And I remember one person said they had tried they'd been married for 20 years. And they had gone through all kinds of therapy and in different clinics. And he said, listen, when you want to tell me that we're pregnant, get me a Jägermeister. And so we had done, and now she comes over and draw her blood, and it's a positive pregnancy test. And she's like beside herself. So she called and told them to meet her for lunch, and she's like, all right, I got you this. And she got this brown paper bag, and she hands it to him, and he's like, what's this? You got me a Jägermeister? It's like lunch? And he's like, no.
Oh my God,
no
I'm
way.
Thinking about it.
Dawned on him. Oh
and
my goodness.
She's crying, and he's crying, and he's like, no. And she's like, yes.
I have goosebumps.
That was one of, there's so many fun stories.
Wow.
And I got to put my little Beatrice as an embryo into my surrogate. Which
wow.
I wasn't expecting. And my doctor said, well, why don't you just do it? And I go,
my goodness.
Really?
It's something I always wondered, but I didn't know how to ask. I was always wondering, did she do her own embryo transfer?
I did. I touched my little Beatrice, and I put her in her uterus, and
so cool.
I dropped her off, and I said, all right.
Good luck in there.
Good luck.
Oh my goodness.
And
that
was
is so special.
It was so crazy. It was amazing.
Wow.
I was like, that was a pretty cool experience too.
Wow.
Really cool. Now, does your daughter understand that yet, or not quite?
She's 2.
Oh, no,
then never
she
mind.
wouldn't.
And we talk about Miss Jody, and Miss Jody, if you're ever listening to this, we love you. So we talk about her, and I say, Beatrice, you were in Miss Jody's tummy. And she goes, Miss Jody? I go, yeah. And she goes, I love her. I go, good.
Oh, that's so sweet. Oh my goodness.
That's really
I just
cool.
love hearing that.
That's really cool.
So 2 more questions, really. And then what I'd like to know is, first, what would you say is the most challenging part of what you do? And then the most satisfying part?
The most challenging is when you're working so hard and everything seems to line up and it doesn't work. and why a perfect, beautiful A+ quality embryo that's PGS normal in this perfect uterus in a surrogate, and you got nothing. And you're like, oh. And then there's the other side where you're like, oh, this embryo's kind of, not looking so great, and the lining looks really thin, and you put it in, you get a baby. So, in order to do this, it requires incredible science, cutting-edge clinical medicine, and then the miracle of life, and they all come together in not so clear, mysterious sometimes ways. So I think that sometimes continuing to push this envelope and try to find new ways to help a couple have a family.
Frank's personal story, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but Silas was very difficult to conceive.
Oh, absolutely.
And we were talking about how there is it's very scientific, obviously, but there's also this very spiritual component to it, and that maybe those embryos failed because Silas was just meant to be here.
Right?
I always tell people that
I can't imagine life without Silas.
Yeah, I always tell people I think it's like 80% science and 20% just pure magic.
Yeah.
Yes.
We don't know how that all works. So
No.
it was just failed embryo transfers until Silas stuck.
Yep.
That little embryo stuck.
He did.
Right?
Right.
But truly, when you find your partner in your life and you're like, oh, it was supposed to, as things happen, and it could be a job, it could be your love, it could be this child, but sometimes you got to let life happen. And I hate to be, to say, oh, what's meant to be, but sometimes what's meant to be will find its way, though I strongly believe that we have a hand in our own blueprint and our where we want to change our path. But I think there's that element of he was supposed to be here.
Yes,
Exactly.
absolutely.
Exactly.
So, any additional advice that you'd have for our listeners?
Don't give up. That's we have the ability to guarantee you a baby. Now, it might be your egg, might be a donor egg, might be donor sperm, might be a donor uterus, but the technology is here to help you have your family. So most couples that stop treatment and are not successful are people who leave us before we get a chance to complete our work and help you have your family. Open your heart and your mind to the possibilities that exist in front of you, and just brush yourself off if you've fallen down, and continue to have just a little bit more courage and encouragement to keep going. Because if you want a baby, if that's important to you, don't give up.
That is amazing advice right there, right? Nothing else needs to be said about that. Don't give up. I really love that, Dr. Beltsos.
Especially in this day and age, there is
just
so
don't
many
give
different
up.
options.
So I really think this podcast has been very informational and insightful, and we really had a great opportunity to hear about your profession, your career, your background.
We're so grateful you were able to make it in.
Oh,
Dr.
yes.
Beltsos, we scheduled this a long time ago.
Yes.
She's a very busy woman and was gracious enough to make time to come into our office, and we're really thankful.
And I really think you provided some really great perspective and insight into what you do. And we really dabbled in a little bit of everything, right? Egg freezing, surrogacy.
Yeah.
Those of you out there who are listening, if you'd like Dr. Beltsos to really hone in on a specific topic, write to us. Send us your requests at info@goldensurrogacy.com.
So basically, Frank's saying is we'd like to have Angie Beltsos back again.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
If possible.
If possible,
you're sweet.
yes.
Thank you.
But once again, Dr. Beltsos, thank you so much. It's
Thank
been an
you.
honor having you here in our studio today. Once again, everyone, we've had the honor of having Dr. Angie Beltsos, the CEO and Medical Director of Vios Fertility Institute, locations in Chicago and
St. Louis and Milwaukee.
St. Louis and Milwaukee. Again, congratulations.
Thank you. And congratulations to you. This place is amazing. And if anyone needs any assistance in surrogacy, call Golden Surrogacy. That's my plug for you. But he's an amazing professional and contributor to building families, and it is really an honor to be here with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone out there who's listening. And as always, please be sure to follow us, and we're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Frank Golden reminding you that everyone deserves a family.